Thank you for inviting me to this most interesting city, and I have met the most interesting people on this tour of mine in the Middle East.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. نتشرف هذا اليوم وبهذه المناسبة الفريدة بأن نتعرف على نظرية التسويق للبروفيسور فيليب كوتلر. وحقيقة نشكر البروفيسور كوتلر على اختياره المملكة لإطلاق نظريته، ونشكر جميع المنظمين لهذا الملتقى والذي يعد الأول من نوعه بمنطقة الشرق الأوسط. ونأمل أن تسهم النظرية الجديدة في دعم استراتيجيات ومفاهيم التسويق في المملكة. إن مشاركة هيئة المدن الصناعية في تنظيم مثل هذه الملتقيات العالمية المتخصصة يدعم مفهوم تطوير العلاقات بين الهيئة والقطاع الخاص لتطوير القطاع الصناعي المملكة العربية السعودية والارتقاء بروح المنافسة عالمياً وتفهم آثار الأزمة العالمية والاستفادة من تجارب ودراسات الخبراء والباحثين في هذا المجال لتكون البداية من حيث انتهى الآخرون. كما تأتي مشاركة الهيئة في تنظيم هذه الملتقيات إلى ما خطط له من برامج تسويقية وتعريفية بالمدن الصناعية في المملكة العربية السعودية لإبراز جهود المملكة في دعم الصناعة لتحقيق الاستراتيجية الوطنية للصناعة والتي تهدف إلى مصادر الدخل وزيادة نسبة الصناعة في الناتج المحلي. وحقيقة أن أهمية هيئة التسويق مهمة جدا في تطوير المنتجات السعودية، وهناك حقيقة تجارب جميلة سواء عالمية كان لها أثر كبير في تطوير التسويق، حتى أن هناك شركات عالمية أرتبط اسم المنتج أو اسم الشركة بالمنتج. حقيقة نعطي كثير من القصص ربما بعضها طريفة. يعني يذكر مثلا أن هناك شخص دخل أحد البقالات وقال لهم عندكم بيبسي؟ قال نعم. قال أعطني والدة. فيعني يبين كيف الاسم الشركة ارتبط بالمنتج المستخدم. وكذلك في منتجات أخرى مثل كلينكس وزيراكس وغيرها، كيف من هذه المنتجات أو اسم الشركات ارتبط بالمنتج نفسه. وعلى المستوى المحلي حقيقة في الفترة الأخيرة أبدعت حقيقة الشركات الاتصالات في المملكة على العموم بالمنافسة وبإعطاء نظرة تسويقية جميلة حقيقة مرتبطة بخدمات متميزة من شركات الاتصالات. يعني إذا كنت أعطي أكثر تمييز في الثلاث سنوات الماضية في التسويق، فبالتأكيد هو يروح أو يذهب لشركات الاتصالات في المملكة. كلهم حقيقة أبدعوا وحقيقة كانت تجارب لهم جميلة. ومرة أخرى أقول أن المملكة حقيقة كان لها إنجازات متميزة كذلك في التطوير الصناعي والخدمي، ولكن حقيقة أقول أننا في حاجة إلى تطوير مفاهيم التسويق للتعريف منتجات المملكة حتى نرتقي من المستوى المحلي أو الإقليمي إلى المستوى العالمي. وهناك حقيقة شركات محلية أبدعت في جودتها وكذلك استطاعت تسويق منتجاتها على المستوى المحلي والإقليمي وأصبحت علامات مميزة على المستوى المحلي. ولكن نحن بحاجة إلى أن تنطلق هذه الشركات إلى العالمية وأن تكون لها أسماء معروفة على مستوى العالم وربما هناك حاجة إلى مشاركة هذه الشركات بشكل أكبر في المعارض العالمية للتعريف بمنتجاتها والوصول إلى العالمية حتى نبني علامات تجارية مميزة. مرة أخرى أشكر الدكتور فيليب كوتلر الذي يشرفنا اليوم. طبعا الدكتور فيليب كوتلر من الأشخاص المتميزين في مجال التسويق، كان مرشح ل5 مرات للفوز بجائزة نوبل. كنت أتطلع يوم أمس يعني أنه يكون من ضمن الفائزين، ولكن لم يتحقق الأمل. كنا نأمل نحتفل هذا اليوم بفوزه، ولكن إذا عرفنا أن هناك أشخاص فازوا بجائزة نوبل وتم ترشيحهم لمدة 20 سنة حتى فازوا بهذه الجائزة، فربما نأمل أن تكون في العام القادم، وخصوصا أنه يعني يخطط أن يعود مرة أخرى مملكة، وهذا شيء مشجع. يعني أن المملكة بمشيئة الله تكون أحد الرواد في مجال التسويق. شكرا جزيلا ونشكركم على الحضور. نشكر الأخوة الداعمين والراعين لهذا الملتقى. شكرا.
Now, we would like to kick off the day by introducing Professor Philip Kotler. Professor Philip is a distinguished professor of international marketing at the Kellogg Business School. He is the owner of the 3P marketing theory, which became the 7P marketing theory, and he is a holder of 12 honorary PhDs. Please join me to welcome Professor Philip Kotler to the stage.
Thank you for inviting me to this most interesting city, and I have met the most interesting people on this tour of mine in the Middle East. I have been here in the Middle East before, where I spoke twice in Dubai, I spoke in Bahrain, I spoke in Cairo, but it's really my first to have the chance to be in Saudi Arabia, and of course 2 days ago I was in Jeddah. Let me share a story with you. Perhaps you know the name John Paul Getty. Many years ago he was the richest man in the world. And I met him, and I asked him a naive question. I said, so what's the secret of being a poor person who makes so much money and becomes the richest man in the world? He says, well, there's 3 things. So I, of course, took out my pencil, and the first thing he says, wake up early every day. So I wrote that down. What's the second thing? He said, you must work hard during the day. I wrote that down. And I said, well, what's the third thing? He said, find oil. So that's the secret of success. It turns out that there are many books about being able to realize your dreams and to be financially independent. When you're running a company, there's many functions involved, and each of them have to be managed carefully. One of the functions that I understand very much is that of marketing and sales. Some companies believe they don't need strong marketing or sales. They think they need strong products. They think that if they're technologically good and make the superior product, they will have a superior share of the market. I guess it's the idea that the product speaks for itself. We sometimes call it the better mousetrap theory. Just make the product better and people will flock to it. Now, in an interesting way, Peter Drucker said the same thing. And to me, Peter Drucker is my hero. And please, all of you, when you're searching for answers for your business or your organization, go back to Peter Drucker. Go back to his thoughts about managing organizations. Now, one of the things Peter said was the aim of marketing is to make selling unnecessary. Now that's a strange remark. Isn't marketing the same as selling? So how could the purpose of marketing to make selling unnecessary? What he meant was, if you could really read the mind of the customer through marketing research, you will create something that he will want. No selling will be necessary. And we don't do that job well. In fact, anytime I see a company working very hard to sell, when I see them calling you up again and again, please buy, obviously the product is not selling itself. There's nothing virtuous about the product, and they're compensating by hard selling. In fact, when it comes to selling, I think there's three types. There's hard selling. You sometimes hear it on a television set, loud, a person barking at you to buy something. There's something we call soft selling, wherein it's done more graciously and more with consideration of your needs. And then there's even an interesting type of selling called no selling, where you don't even seem interested in selling. You don't even, it's like, if he doesn't buy, it doesn't matter to me, which sometimes is a very effective form of selling, because we then say we want that, because he's not even trying to sell us that, maybe it's really good. But we'll get to that later, because I want to spend the time with you to look at a new idea called Marketing 3.0, a new book of mine, because that does suggest that marketing is changing to higher levels in certain companies that the other companies, the competitors, should know about. Obviously, marketing 1.0 must be the kind of marketing we always thought of doing: have a big budget for advertising, have a good sales force, get in there and fight for sales, and so on. We call it very product-centered. Very much, I'm a company best defined as making product X. Automobiles, soft drinks, whatever. Marketing 2.0 has a different flavor. It has to do with really being interested in defining the customers we want to serve and getting to know as much about them as we can, even individually, or at least on the level of a segment. Maybe I want to serve people who are middle class. Maybe I want to serve people who are senior citizens. But Marketing 2.0 is more of a customer-driven company than a product-driven company. Marketing 3.0 goes to a third level. And let me not talk about it yet, because I'll show you what I mean by that. And those companies here that move to Marketing 3.0, I think will have an advantage. The interesting thing that's a discovery to me is that in writing this book, I was not thinking of where I was going to speak about it. I was not thinking of Islam. And as I get more acquainted with your culture, your values, I realize I have captured in here a message which is very much congruent, aligned with your culture and your thinking. It was very gratifying to me to know that Marketing 3.0 is the most appropriate way to think about your business and your customers and what your business is all about. So let's see what the day is going to consist of. I hope when you leave today, three things will happen. You will have a better sense of the challenges that everyone is facing economically and how to meet these challenges. The second is you will think more about your brand and how to improve it, because every company is known by some customers, and the brand represents the idea they have of you. sometimes I say, tell me 2 or 3 things about company X. And they may not even be able to do that. Oh, I just know there's company X, but I can't say anything more about them, which really means there's no brand. If they can say 3 or 4 things about the company, I'd like to know what words come to mind. Are they good words or bad words? Are they in love with company X? Or do they hate company X? What's the quality of the brand? What's the meaning of the organization? Whether it's a company or a nonprofit organization or a government unit, even a government agency is branded in the minds of people. Some people might say, oh, I hate to go to the license bureau to get an automobile license. I hate to go to a certain government department because I'm in line all the time, because the service is poor. So you can't avoid being a brand. Question is, are you designing your brand? Are you making it stand out? If you're in a highly competitive industry with many competitors, you're going to look pretty much like they do unless you know how to stand out, how to be different and better. By the way, the words I really use is not only to be better than a competitor, not only to be different than the competitor, but to make a difference in the industry and in the society. So it's more than being different, it's also making a difference. The third thing I'd like you to walk out with is a sense of how you manage the people in your company who are responsible for sales and marketing. We're learning that they sometimes don't get along. Very interesting that the sales people and the marketing people, who should be a team and work together, have some issues with each other. One great example is when the salespeople don't like the price put on the product they have to sell. The marketing department sets the price, and the salespeople say, I can't sell that product at that price. They're unrealistic. But there are other issues as well that I'd like to say some things about that last issue, sales and marketing, that will make you go back to your organizations and build a stronger marketing power. But let's move on. Incidentally, I threw in this picture. You don't know the person on your left. He's my co-author of the book. He is from Indonesia. He runs the largest marketing research company, marketing training company, marketing consulting company in Indonesia, out of Jakarta. That's Hermawan Hartajaya. And Hermawan is one of the most brilliant co-authors I've ever worked with. You should know the man on the other side. Any of you know who that is? Yes, good. He happens to be one of the greatest marketers of all times. That's Richard Branson. Richard Branson, who owns about 200 companies, the Virgin set of companies, who himself is the one who gets involved to sell the product. Let me explain that. Do you know that Virgin also makes bridal gowns for women getting married? Wedding gowns. That's one of his businesses. It's kind of strange because the company is called Virgin. Anyways. But in any case, to make sure people know that he has such a company, he came up with this idea. He himself will wear the woman's wedding gown and be filmed as if he's being married. And of course, that gets so much attention that everyone now knows that one of his businesses are wedding gowns. Another business is airways. And by the way, he has been known to go to the Heathrow Airport when one of his Virgin Atlantic flights came in very late, to go and see the passengers and apologize for the plane having mess up something. Recently, to promote his new cell phone, he's now in the cell phone business, Virgin Phones. There was a news item that in New York City he was going to be there, and you could see him. He was going to jump off of a building, a 20-story building, at 12 o'clock on Tuesday. 10,000 people go to New York City, to Times Square, to see a man jump off. He did jump off. He had a rope. He was on a rope. But he was carrying the largest mock-up of the new cell phone. It was an advertisement, a living advertisement that I now make cell phones. The biggest one. And he came down. How else can you get 10,000 people in New York City to know anything? And remember, each of those who went to the event will tell 10 friends. So he is, he has written 2 wonderful books about his life and his thinking, and you might want to read them. The other brilliant marketer is Steve Jobs from Apple. I mean, he's not the marketing department, he is the CEO. But when you get a CEO who thinks marketing, it makes such a difference to a company. If you get a CEO who doesn't know what marketing can do, has the wrong ideas, thinks it's just a big advertising budget, thinks that it's just some brochures or something, that's not marketing. That's just the surface of marketing. So I just wanted to say that there are wonderful things happening here. Okay, I'm going to list a set of problems that many of us face in our businesses. One that you have to be concerned with is never do you want business to get a bad name. Because the public shouldn't be suspicious of business. The trouble is, business is unregulated. There are some bad businesses. We get a Enron in my country. We get a WorldCom. We get CEOs who are cheating. We get fraudulence and books that are bad. But it's a problem. And I believe that they're caught sooner or later. And what we always have to contrast are the great companies, the companies with a good sense of values and ethics. Globalization is something that will not be stoppable. You can't stop it. You can't stop capital from moving to where it can work best and get the most value. That's why capital is flowing into China. China is gold rush. My brother, Milton, recognized that 7 years ago, changed his whole career. He does not live in China, but he flies from Washington, D.C. to China to his business there. He has 80 people working for him to help Chinese companies figure out which American companies to buy and to help American companies figure out which Chinese companies to buy. So we got to play in the globe, not just in our country. In your case, you do not have brands that are bought in other countries, that are bought in the West, that I know of. You haven't done the job of creating a regional or global brand. This doesn't mean that you don't have strong brands. You do have strong brands, locally and regionally, Middle East. But you shouldn't feel badly about it, because I can say the same thing about China. We don't know Chinese brands, right? Well, Lenovo and Haier, I can name maybe 3. Russia, I don't think Russian products are found in the West, the advanced part of the West. So it isn't the size of the country that makes a brand, makes it a company that has created a country that has created good brands. It's more like some other traditions. because some of the smallest countries in the world have the most well-known brands around the world. Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Sweden. I'm thinking of Switzerland. Each of you could name 3 to 5 products that are internationally successful and known. Nestle, Swiss watches and candy, Ericsson. I could go on, Saab, Volvo, and all that. So, and this is the size of the country. You're, with the 30 million people you have here, Saudi Arabia, you could have worldwide brands. But that's part of how, the level at which you want to participate in the globalization scene. We are in the midst of, we're over the recession. Technically, a recession is 2 quarters long of down, down. The West is now a little out of that, but we still have a lot of problems to solve. And please don't think that when things fall into a recession, the first thing to do is to cut marketing. Actually, the first things you usually cut, you stop hiring people, you stop your R&D. You're not going to make new products where the market you can't even sell the old ones. And you cut marketing. You don't cut the sales force that much, but you may cut the marketing budget based on the notion that marketing takes a longer time to show its good works. It's more like investments that build the brand and get you to know the market, but it's not tangible enough to keep going when you're starving for money. But we'll say more about the issue of handling in hard times your budgets. Be aware that the world is changing very, very rapidly technologically, and some people are nervous about that because their own industry may disappear. There are new things that take place. I mean, the movie industry was worried that no one's going to go to a movie theater because we're going to watch movies at home. Well, we do both now. The newspaper industry is worried. The music industry is worried that you won't have to go to a store to buy your music. You get it on iTunes. So we have this kind of we're living in a world which is changing, and I have a certain piece of advice. Don't let yourself become obsolete. It's very easy to become obsolete. Keep up with the new things. Keep up with, just figure out what Facebook is about. Figure out what blogging is about. You should know what YouTube is. You should be buying an iPad. Keep up with these things. Your children know those things. The children are brighter than we've ever been. And it's wonderful to see these as, if you are part of a learning mentality, you're going to continue learning a lot. Something about the environment, and we now have to add one more thing in our business thinking. What is our business doing to the pollution and the global warming and the environment? The name we give to that is sustainability. And I'll tell you a little story. There was something sent to me about Tata Industries. Tata is the Indian company, and that they're working on a new car, and it's going to be driven by compressed air. I couldn't believe it, that compressed air might be our fuel, in a sense, eventually. And it is true. They were playing with compressed air as a possibility where you have to get some more of the compressed air after driving 40 miles or 50 miles or something like that. However, they gave that up because they learned that while the car would not do any polluting, compressed air wouldn't pollute, The making of the containers of compressed air had a terrible carbon footprint. You can see the irony that when you look at the whole supply chain, you find out that if you make your cars that will go on compressed air, it's a worse footprint than oil. So so this whole thing is we're doing a lot of tracing of what we're causing as harm to the planet by these things. Watch the new social media and watch for political changes. Now, here's the thing. Let's say you have a healthy company. Is there anything that could happen to you that would suddenly hurt your company? Yes, one thing, there's several things, but one is you might be blinded about changes going around you that will haunt you. Let me give you and recommend a book that has made a big impression recently. You may know Jim Collins, who has written some books about leadership, level 5 leadership, level 4 leadership, and so on and so forth. But in a new book called How the Mighty Fall, he is essentially describing why General Motors went bankrupt. Stage 1, a successful company could get arrogant and try to do too many things. And it's easy when, if you're the Cisco company, you're the General Electric company, you could say, we could do anything. We can take on a dozen new projects. All right. And that's fine. Maybe the company can succeed. But let's see. This leads them in stage 2 to pursue growth. They see themselves as able to, they need to grow 12% next year, so they're going to take on a lot of projects. There may be signs they're missing, that they cannot digest all of these efforts. But even when they get worried themselves that they have gone into too many new markets, too many new businesses, the public doesn't know they're in trouble. Only they know that maybe they have to be careful and withdraw a little bit. If they withdraw a little bit, they're fine. If they don't, the public begins to hear of the trouble. That's stage 4. Now we know General Motors, we hear that two of their car divisions, Oldsmobile and Pontiac, are going to be discontinued. We sell our stock in General Motors. And if General Motors doesn't recover and make the right decisions, they could finally go bankrupt. Now, I tell you this story because had General Motors asked me to be their consultant 15 years ago, as much as 15 years ago, I could have told them things that they should realize about their strategy that would have saved them from this happening. I would have told them that they had too many car divisions and that their cars were very average compared to the Japanese and some other things, that their strategy was absolutely fatal. But they went on, and the way we put it is this: General Motors doesn't look out of the window as to what's happening. They're looking in a mirror, and they're seeing a big, big company, such a big, they're looking in the mirror, and they love it. It's like the whole corporate group was thinking about how good they are, rather than looking out of the window. I'll give you a real example of that. In the state of California, more and more people were buying Toyotas and Hondas. So they ignored that. They said, well, that's just the Californians who want smaller cars or something. You don't ignore that. You buy those cars up, you take them apart, you make a better car. So this is a kind of thing that is being discussed in how some big companies get into a trap of failure. I wrote a book a year ago called Chaotix, which deals with the recession and turbulence issue. The word does not really exist. The word chaos exists. Chaotics, however, was an author's attempt to make it sexy, to get attention. Chaotics. But the subhead of it is the business of managing and marketing in the age of turbulence. And let me therefore distinguish three types of economic ills which are very different from each other. Don't confuse these three. One is the business cycle. The business cycle will continue. It's very hard for capitalism, a capitalistic economy or world, to avoid business cycles. Here's why. When something is growing and attractive, like real estate, more people will want to participate. There will be more speculation. And here's the problem. The government may even notice that. The government may say, this is the time to cool it off, to make it harder to buy real estate. But the opposition says if you do that, you're going to kill the economy. You're going to actually cause the recession. The government, on the other hand, says, but if we don't stop it now, it will be a bust. I mean, so there's a phenomenon we call irrational exuberance. That's the term. Irrational behavior, exuberant, enthusiastic, buying up real estate. It happened to, you're going to have booms and busts. How to moderate them, how to make the bust less deep and the boom not as high is a real problem. So that's recession. A second thing to notice is very different. It's called disruptions. And one of the Harvard professors, Christensen, wrote wonderful work on how some industries are destroyed by innovation, a brand new technology. I'll mention some of those in a moment. So that's different than, so an industry could be hurt by recession, it could be hurt by a whole new disruption. The third phenomena is another thing, and that's turbulence. And that is a shakiness in the environment from day to day. It's volatility. I think the modern world we're in now is going to have more and more surprises and bumps. Not bumps of recession, not bumps of disruption. Those are separate. Just bumps. Let me give you this example. Let's say in the old days, you go to work on Monday, and the day's pretty normal, and you do your work. Tuesday's normal. Wednesday, there's a little bump, something no one would expect it. By Thursday, you fixed it up. Friday's normal. When I talk about turbulence, it's a different scenario. You come in Monday, there's already a problem you didn't expect. It's a problem you can't solve until Wednesday. Thursday's quiet, and Friday, suddenly a problem. So the only way you will know if the world has changed a little and there's more turbulence is what's the week like in your business? How many new things are beginning to happen that there was no warning about, no sense? I think we have to learn to live with more surprises. Now the book gives two big methods of handling that problem. One is called building an early warning system. That means you've made different people in your company responsible for watching different sectors. In your company, if someone who's watching government and the regulations and the tax situation and anything that might affect how your company performs. I mean, if the CEO has any concern, he talks to that person, says, is there anything happening in the government sector that might help or hurt us? But another person in the company is watching the competitors. Another person is assigned to watch the customers. Are they changing? Are they shifting out of buying from us, is some other competitor becoming popular and getting share? And then who's going to watch the technology that's changing? Who's going to be the person in your company you could say, what's the latest technology is going to help or hurt us? Should we make a big bet and buy into that? So that's what an early warning system is. It doesn't stop you from being surprised, but it reduces the number of surprises and gets you more prepared. The other technique is called scenario planning. And the master of that is the Shell Oil Company. Do you know Shell thinks 10 to 20 years ahead? They have built scenarios. They built a scenario if the price of oil goes to X. We're going to have everything you want to buy will be in a store. Every one of those is wrong. Today, I predict more and more of what we will buy will be bought online. Our music, our books, clothing, shoes, refrigerators. Go to Amazon and you can buy almost anything sent to you without you going to a store. So the fact is, look at the disruptions. And it's good that we've had these disruptions. Look at classroom education. Now people are learning so much online. There are universities online. There are webinars, etc. That's disruption. Now, just to give you a real sense of how tomorrow could be different than today, let's take a few examples. Take automobiles. The leader in automobiles back in the 20s was the Ford Motor Company. And Henry Ford was a genius to get down the cost of a car to $500. He wouldn't even give it another color. It always had to be black. Just keep the cost down. Of course, he lost out to General Motors when General Motors said, we will have a car for every personality, and purpose. But Toyota is still today the dominant manufacturer, the number one. They took leadership over. What's tomorrow? Could it be Chery, the Chinese car company? Could it be the Nano car coming from Tata for $2,500? What will General Motors do if people are able to buy a car for $2,500? Should General Motors buy Tata? No, they can't buy Tata. Tata's too big. Can they make a similar car here in the United States? No, they can't. The labor costs wouldn't allow that unless it's an automatic factory. Should they open up a unit in India to make the car? Will it be better or different? So you can see that when you look at tomorrow and who are the winners, and I'm not sure they'll stay the winners. Like Skype has done a marvelous thing. I Skype a lot as a phone, but they have their competitors. BlackBerry has its competitors, and so on and so forth. So it gives you more of a perspective. Now, let's go to marketing, and because I really want to be sure you're using it in the very best way possible. I picked up a dictionary, a Webster dictionary, just to see how marketing was defined in 1997. Act or practice of advertising and selling a product. To me, that's a joke. And yet it was really the way marketing was treated. It's sort of like, I need some marketing in order to put out some ads and so on. Let's look at the definition under the American Marketing Association, which has really matured. Marketing is the activity. Now they could have stopped there, but they didn't just stop at activity. Set of institutions, wholesalers, retailers, a whole bunch of jobbers, actors, and processes. And here's the magic word: for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging. Notice that. It's like marketers should be creating ideas, not just selling a product. Creating and communicating and delivering through the supply chain and so on, and exchanging offerings that had value. Now, it could have said value for customers or consumers. It didn't stop there. For consumers, clients, partners, and society at large. So I like that definition very much. Now, let's go further. The common conception of marketing is that it's about goods and services. You're marketing goods or services. Let's add, you market also experiences. Now you might say, but a service is an experience. For example, going to a hospital is not just getting a service, a surgery or an operation. You're also getting an experience. You're in the hospital. But most hospitals don't think of designing the experience of the hospital. The walls are still a purple or depressing. You're getting the service, but they're not thinking that the best services are really a designed experience that is gratifying. We got the notion of experience more from Disney. Disney is not just a set of services. When you go to Disneyland, where there's a restaurant, you see some cartoon characters, you take some rides. To them, they are trying to design a wonderful experience. In fact, they do so much training of the people at the people at Disney, the employees. They're trained before they ever get to sell hamburgers to you. 2 weeks of training, not only on how to make the hamburger, but how to smile, and so on and so forth. So the delivering of an experience is part of marketing. Now, what else can we market? We can market places. If you told me you want to double the number of tourists who come to Riyadh, I could figure out a plan. If you have enough hotels. We market a country. We market a city. We brand a city. We brand a country. Some cities suddenly take off. Look at what happened in Bilbao, Spain. I have to tell you a story. 12 years ago, I gave a lecture in Bilbao, Spain. Now, Bilbao is not Madrid. It's not Barcelona. But it's a very classy city. In the 1920s, it was a real hub of economic activity. In Bilbao, if you go to their downtown area, you'll see very fine built commercial buildings. But they've been bypassed. So I said to them 12 years ago, your city has a lot to offer, but you have nothing to offer that's tangible. You don't have an Eiffel Tower. You don't have a world-class museum. I said, you need something to be symbolic and for people to fly far away to come to see something. One of the words was museum. I had nothing to do with the designing of the museum, but that stuck. So they hired that famous architect, Frank Gehry, who created such an extraordinary building that it doesn't matter whether the building has art in it, paintings, it doesn't matter. Do you know Japan has chartered air flights from Tokyo to Bilbao? Now, you have some interesting features to Riyadh. Architecturally, there's some interesting buildings that I passed and so on. The real point I'm trying to make is every place is going to be a brand in some way, and it can be marketed better through the tourist agency or whatever. We also market people. Do you know there's an agency called William Morris, the William Morris Agency? A young woman who might be a singer in nightclubs, she might come to them or they might discover her and they say, and she wants to become more famous. She wants to be really known by more people. They'll look her over and they'll say, you know, there's a lot of work we could do with you to make you a more famous product. They don't use that language. They say, first of all, you have to dress a little differently. You have no fashion. Even your hairdo is not, you're a very beautiful woman, but your voice needs more training. We have specialists in training voices. We get you on the talk shows to be a singer, you know, where they take that break and someone sings. And before you know it, she's Barbara Streisand. You understand that there are makeovers of people who want to get more well-known. I wrote a book called High Visibility on that very subject. How do you get better known? We also market ideas. We also market causes. When you market a cause, we give it the name social marketing. Now that's not social media marketing, using social media. It's just using marketing to help a good cause. For example, please do not smoke. It's going to hurt you and people around you. That would be, and now we have developed techniques. We could actually tell you the best way to get young girls not to smoke. And it's a different approach to get young boys not to start smoking. There's a different approach to get heavy smokers to slow down and reduce their smoking. We do the same with alcohol. We have techniques for trying to get people not to drink or to drink less, not to drive when they drink, and so on. So I've written my 4th edition on the book called Social Marketing, how we can take very good causes and get better behavior. Okay, enough on that. Sales and marketing. By the way, I know you will have questions and comments as I talk. Please save them. We're going to have a wonderful 4th session with a panel and then with your questions and observations. Since I'm talking about sales and marketing, when did sales begin? When did they begin? How old is selling? Now, my guess is it goes way back. Marketing is not old. Sales is very old. The story is sometimes told that from a biblical point of view, you would say that the first salesperson was Eve because she got Adam to eat the apple. Or they even say the snake was the first salesperson who got Eve interested in telling Adam to eat the apple. So that's whatever you want to do with that. It suggests that sales began long ago when there were people, right? Now, we do know that in ancient Greece there was the marketplace. People would bring their goods and sit on the sidewalk and they would sell. So selling is the world's, possibly the world's oldest profession. Marketing probably dates from the 1910s and 1920s. It's a relatively new thing. Marketing, because the word market was not new. There was a Greek marketplace, agora. But marketing, doing things with the market, 1910, 1920. And so the question is, why did we ever get marketing started? Well, it has to do with the salespeople. Salespeople don't want to do certain things. They want others to do them. The salesperson wants to be in the office of the buyer selling. We need someone else to figure out who the salesman should call on. Because in the old days, the salesman would just knock on every door and be refused by most people. Wouldn't it be nice if you had someone who could do a little research and find the location of the best prospects who would be interested in the product? The second thing the salesman wanted would be help in communication. Not personal communication, but they would like some brochures. They would like some advertising. And they can't do it. The third thing that they would like would be trade shows and other things taking place to gather a lot of prospects. So marketing came about to do some things salesmen didn't want to do. Now it led to another stage because those 3 or 4 people who were there to support the salespeople They were in the sales department, but more of those people started up as soon as we went into brands. And as soon as companies became multi-product companies. In a multi-product company, you'll have to have a product manager for each product, okay? And then if the product has 3 or 4 brands, for example, detergents. The Procter & Gamble company makes Bold detergent, Tide, Cheers. They had even 7 or 8 brands of detergent. That means 7 or 8 brand managers reporting to the product manager. And every brand manager is so busy, he needs an associate. And every associate is so busy, he needs an assistant. So now we have a lot of people doing brand work, and the CEO wants a brand plan for the year, a marketing plan. Guess what? What happened is marketing became a separate department. From just a few people who did a few things for the support of the salespeople to a whole new department, and a busy department at that. And a department responsible for the plan, the annual plan and the 3 to 5 year plan. So that's the background of sales and marketing. Now what's happened is marketing itself went through stages. The first stage was selling. Again, the idea of setting up selling systems involving distribution, salespeople, some advertising. That's when you're just pushing out the product to a mass market. Then it went to a more conceptual stage called the 4P stage. And it's a formula we use. You know, even the economists have a formula. Theirs is called demand and supply. Everything affects either demand or supply or both. That's their framework. So we have a framework called the 4 Ps. What's your product? What's your price? What's your place where we can obtain it? And what's your promotion? We call that the marketing mix. But in a later stage, we began to say, before you set the 4 Ps, really ask, who are you trying to sell to and what need are you trying to meet? And we now call that the STP stage. Segmentation, targeting, and positioning. In other words, you do that before you ever set the product, price, place, and promotion. And then we move to this kind of thinking. We really should know who our customers are, and we should create a database, a customer database. And in some cases, we ought to know their ages, their incomes, their education, their needs, their interests, their preferences. So the database could have a lot of information. Every bank would like to have a database of its customers, and in fact, every bank could look up everything that its customers have spent and bought and so on. But if you're going to have such a rich database, you better have data mining. You better hire some technical people to watch what's happening in all that data in the way of trends. For example, you might see that some of your customers are shifting more to a different color preference in garments or whatever they're buying. A data miner, someone who could mine the data, could be worth a great deal to you because otherwise the data is a miss. Trends are in the data. And we got to that stage. The name we give sometimes is CRM, Customer Relationship Management. Customer Relationship Management. And now the latest stage is a new idea called co-creation. It's a different way to see the customer. Normally, we make a product for customers, and at best we might sample it, ask what a few of them think about it, test it a little bit, and we're satisfied with just finding out that enough customers are interested in the new product. How about actually engaging them to help co-create the product? Now, you might say, but what do they know technically? How can they help create the product? Well, let's take some examples. The Harley-Davidson company makes motorcycles. There's a lot of motorcycle lovers who don't work for the company, but who knock on their door and say, we have great ideas for your motorcycles. Can we just help? We don't want to be paid for anything. We just love to hang around with your engineers. And sure enough, many fine ideas have come from fans of the company, people who love the company, to hang around and to give ideas to the engineers. The Lego company is in the same situation, the one in Denmark. Children, ages 8, 10, 12, they love to work with Lego. They love to give Lego some ideas, new ideas, and Lego just is so open to that. Now, you might say this is unique, but if you're a business-to-business marketer, you do the same thing. If you're creating a certain component for a big machine, you're going to be working very much with the buyer, with some of the biggest possible buyers. And they will co-create the product they want. Let's say you're an automobile company and you're going to have seats designed for the automobile. You will ask the supplier to co-create it with you. And you'll ask customers for their ideas on the seat's comfort and the seat's material. So co-creation is a sense of involving the power of the customer and the supplier in your business. It's against the old idea, which everything has to be done secretly. I can't let outsiders into my company. I got to protect what I'm working on. Procter & Gamble has completely changed this whole idea of that. Procter & Gamble has a philosophy called Discover and Connect, something like that. They say that at Procter & Gamble they have 7,500 scientists and engineers, but they actually have 75,000 because they are connected around the world with famous scientists specialized in different areas who are ready to help Procter & Gamble. So, by the way, the credit for the co-creation talk belongs to the late and great Prahalad. If any of you heard the name of the strategic thinker C.K. Prahalad, who also wrote the book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. But co-creation was one of his books. Now, often I'm asked this question, what is marketing all about? How can you give a condensed version? And this may be a question coming from the CEO of a company. The CEO says, all right, how should I think about marketing? So I give him this. So what am I saying? Because this is meaningless without knowing what the letters mean. So let's take the objective of marketing. I say the objective is CCDVTP. Okay? So let me give you the word. The objective of marketing is to create, that's the first C. To communicate, second one. And D, to deliver. To create, communicate, and deliver. V, value, the most important word in our vocabulary. To create, communicate, and deliver value to a T, target customer, at a P, profit, if you're a for-profit firm. So that's the objective. I got to remember, I'm always trying to create, communicate, and deliver value to a target customer at a profit. What's the process? The process always starts with R, research. Never go into another country with your product without first doing research. How do you know that that other country cares about this product of yours? Starts with research. Goes to segmentation, targeting, and positioning, because every market is strange and big and has to be broken up so you can choose the part that you can serve well. And then you have to position your product as saying it's the best way to clean your teeth, or it's the best, the most fuel-efficient car, whatever you're saying. That's positioning. Then you do your marketing mix, product, price, place, and promotion. Then you implement. The I is to implement, because many good plans fail with poor implementation. But to find out if the implementation has been a problem, you have C. C is to control. You do control by getting feedback. You measure market share. You measure your margins. You measure your brand equity. You measure your customer equity. So control is to get back measures, metrics that will see if things aren't working well. Philosophy. Philosophy can be called CIB. Customer is boss. Customer is boss. Customer has the power. He votes. She votes. Now, when I mention that to someone, he says, you should be qualified. There are customers who want things you don't want to really make. People might want cigarettes. You're not going to serve, you're not going to enshrine the customer and give the customer anything he or she wants. True. But I meant to remember that voting is going on. Customers either buy from you or a competitor. Okay. Now, the bad news is that marketing is losing some of its effectiveness in the recession period and because of other things happening. And I'm going to just very briefly mention this, and then we'll take our break. Distributors, very interesting what's happening. In a recession, there's a lot of pressure to take money out of your advertising budget and put it into giving more to the trade. Let's say you're selling through retail stores, like supermarkets. The supermarkets are getting very powerful. I mean, I may be Nestle, I may be Kraft, but I need their shelf space. The middlemen are more in power now than the makers of products. They're selling me space. So what if the supermarket says, I'm going to need more allowance. I want you to give me 2 cases for 1 or something, whatever. We call that trade allowances. The only way to do that is to take money out of advertising. Now, my brand power with the consumer has been weakened. They're not getting enough of my share of voice. So, in giving more money to the trade, see, the difference is called push and pull. I'd like to pull customers toward me with advertising, but I also have to push my product into the supermarket. And we see that in recent years, these companies are telling me that they are putting more into their trade sales operations and their salespeople who deal with the supermarket and left with less to pull in customers to prefer their brand. Secondly, the traditional media are weakening. We are spending a little less time with print, a little less time maybe in some countries with television, a little less time with magazines. We're so busy. We've got the internet. The internet in some countries now is occupying more time than watching television. So the media are changing, and we're urging companies to consider putting someone in the department who can do experiments with blogs and with Yahoo, blogs and with Facebook and with YouTube and some other things. And then competition is growing everywhere. You know, I was talking to the former head of Young and Rubicon, the advertising agency, Peter Jagesko, and who just wrote a book about his life in advertising. And he says the world is full of excess goods. Excess goods. Excess supply. What he means is every industry could make more than it's making now because the demand isn't sufficient. We can make 50% more cars. We can make 30% more steel. There's an overabundance of capacity. And he says that's what we have to deal with, which really means that some companies will die or be absorbed or merged. I mean, we have too many companies in many industries. Part of it is that it's really, another way of putting it is there's insufficient demand rather than there is excess supply. So the question is there insufficient demand because there's insufficient need for cars? Look at it this way. No, there's a lot of people who want to own a car. There's 4 billion poor people in the world. They want to own a car. It's not a problem of insufficient need, it's a problem of insufficient demand. Demand is need plus money to buy. So what's the cause of insufficient demand? It has something to do with the distribution of income, possibly, especially when you read that in the United States that the top 1% of earners took 25% of all the income. So we may have a problem of greed. A problem of greed because it's wonderful for some people to be millionaires and billionaires, but the question really is, there's got to be enough money in the hands of most people to buy things. I am so much impressed with what is being done today by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Now, you know who we are talking about, but I don't know if all of you know what they're doing. They are making a phone call to a billionaire, someone they know, friend, and taking him out to dinner, sitting down and saying, we hope you're going to give away half your wealth to help others. They've done this 70 times already, and 40 of the 70 people said yes. Ted Turner said, who runs CNN, said, of course. Each in their own way. We hope it isn't money that's just going to go for the art and concerts and opera. We're hoping it goes to lift the poor, to help end poverty in some way. But in any case, we're stuck with that. And the public, and their attitudes toward business and so on is making it hard to be trusted sometimes. And then the social media is going to change our lives in so many ways. So we must master a new set of forces if we're going to be successful. In fact, I've ended up thinking that we need 2 marketing departments. And I'm going to stop on this point. 2 marketing departments? Why? One will be called downstream marketing. It's the normal marketing department. Its job is to sell more of what you make today. Okay? It's a normal job of getting the goods out of your factory and sold to people. It leaves no time to think about what I should be making 3 to 5 years from now. So the second department is a much smaller one. It's 3 to 5 people, and their job is to think, what should a refrigerator be like 3 to 5 years from now? Should the door of the refrigerator have a computer on it? Should it have an ice maker and water that you can get without opening the refrigerator? Are you leaving enough time to think about how your product or service should evolve 3 to 5 years from now? When I was in Jeddah, I met an amazing man who has created an amazing hospital called the International Medical Center in Jeddah that is a new way to heal people who are in the hospital, who chooses the most caring and qualified doctors and the most caring and qualified nurses, and who arranges the whole hospital to be a system that delivers healing, not just an operation. So whatever business we're in, let's look at the leaders and how they're shaping the industry and what we could do to be an innovator ourselves. Let me stop here because I'm right at the point where we can talk about Marketing 3.0 and the set of new ideas that I think you'd be interested in. So have some coffee and tea and a break, and I'll see you shortly. Thank you very much. Organizations like the Cancer Society, the Heart Disease Society, the social services, museums. So the nonprofit world is a big world, and the problem with them is they have not been businesslike. Because a lot of people who go into the nonprofit world, they're doing good, and they don't like even the concept of business. They're there to help, and you should give them donations and so on and so forth. So my purpose has been to try to put some business discipline into their thinking so they are managing the money well, they're raising money for good causes and creating value. The other sector that I worry about is the government sector, because it's you want the government to be civil servants. The term we use for government is civil servants. They're servants of the civil society. But they don't act that way sometimes in certain bureaucracies where we have to wait in line, and there isn't that business-like service concept. So I wrote a book called Marketing for the Public Sector, Marketing for the Public Sector. Now, even within some of these other branches, there are specializations. For example, museums. Just the idea of how does a museum attract visitors? How does it raise money? How does it create a good product around itself? So there's works on museum I have a thing called Museum Management and Strategy. Museum Strategy and Marketing. Colleges. How do you run a college? How do you get the right students? How do you know what they want? What should they get from you? How do you compete with other colleges? How do you raise money? So we have a book on educational marketing, and it goes on and on. So I want you to understand that the idea that every organization markets is now clear. So I'm going to say more about how they can do better marketing. Now, social media, we better call our age the age of social media. And what social media means is you have lost control of your image. You have lost control of your image making. The image is being made for you of your company in the marketplace of conversations. Now, people on Facebook and other things are talking about everything. One of them might say, I just bought this car and I am so disappointed. He may be so disappointed, he may not only send that message to his friends, he can send it to the world. He could go and get master lists of the email addresses of people and just tell everyone how bad that product is. And even those he tells might then repeat it to others. So we are at the mercy of conversations going on around the world that include subjects about products and services and other things. Now, we ought to monitor what is being said by people to each other about our company or our organization. Now, there's 4 possible things you're going to find out if you could monitor. One is the worst that you could find out. Whenever your name comes up, they say something bad about it. That's the worst that could happen. The second worst would be nobody talks about you. You're not interesting enough. That's all right. Maybe you don't want anyone to talk about you. The third would be you're discovering a mix of good and bad things. Sad. It's okay. Learn from the good things and even become better. And for the bad things, try to correct them. See why there are some disappointments, complaints. The best thing that could happen is everyone's liking you. Everyone, whenever you're mentioned, they're saying nice things. The way you find that out is if you have used Twitter as one thing, you put in a keyword. It takes keywords. So I put in the word company X. It would be your company. It will show me any statements made by one person to another, if any of them were made about your company. Now, as a matter of fact, we're beginning to get the measures of these things, and there's a company called Hopscotch, I think, that is actually getting a measure of what's being said about you in all kinds of media, and also if you've been trying to generate discussions yourself, and by the way, you use Twitter in an interesting way to generate good talk about yourself, you can get through this company or some other companies the ROI, the return on investment, for an effort to get good conversations going about your product. By the way, a lot of companies have a site on Twitter. There is a microsite for Coca-Cola. There's a microsite site for Starbucks, where people like to gather and be talking about Starbucks. It's sort of like, it's even where Starbucks is announcing a new coffee they're going to develop next week. So people who are coffee lovers can go on the site and make comments, ask questions, and so on. But the main thing is this. I distinguish three things affecting your image. One is what I call your integrity. You've got to have integrity. You've got to stand for something that you're good at and you deliver. You deliver on what you promise. That's before you think of image even. That's when you think of who you are. Given that you have integrity, the second thing is you do what we call identity work. You build your identity. You define who you are in words, in pictures, in colors, in music. You're building your brand, your identity. Now, does that become your image in the marketplace? You would like to. That's why you're busy creating your identity. But then remember these conversations. Everyone's talking, and they could be saying good and bad things. So the image you have is a result of the identity work you do plus what others say. And all I'm alerting you to is what others are saying is playing a bigger role in your image, and therefore it's not totally under your control. In fact, I say a brand can be hijacked. You know what I mean by hijacking? Some consumers can really end up loving or hating you and taking over. It could even be a social movement or a group that will say good or bad things about you. And as I said, there's four possibilities that we've already mentioned. So Marketing 2.0 was about managers listening to consumers' voices to understand them and to get insight. And Marketing 3.0 is the recognition that consumers will play a key role in creating the value of your product, the image of your product, and what it does for people. So if we look at things historically, and I've said this earlier, originally we were managing a product. From the 1950s to the later on, it was sort of, I make soft drinks and I sell them. Then we became interested, as I said, customer management. I know the customers and I want to deliver value. The third stage was, I ought to build a good brand. I mean, my customers know me, but I got to do some brand strength development. And I even have to measure whether my brand equity, and I'll define that later, is my brand equity growing, same, or declining? And the fourth stage that we're in now is to think that I'm really managing value. I'm creating, communicating, and delivering value to a target market, and I'm not happy unless they are getting value I won't last unless I am creating real value. Okay. Now, if you take those concepts of your company will have product managers, maybe customer managers, and brand managers. In the multinational, all of those people exist. Today's marketing concept is, of course, the 4 Ps. The additional idea to that in the future is co-creation, which is, yes, the company sets the 4 Ps. The company sets its product, price, place, and promotion. But with the help, increasingly, of an active relationship with your customers to help you know what they want. Then secondly, customer management is sort of STP. I define the segment, I target, and I position myself. In the future, there's going to be more of communitization, which is a new word, but know the word community. A community is more than a segment. See, a segment could be this. It could be young, small dogs, and what kind of food do they need. It's well defined, but a community might be everyone who loves Apple computers, or everyone who loves Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And it's a very different mix. It's not, all those people aren't the same. The people who love Apple are very different people, but you built a community of lovers, or people who prefer you. So I want to show you that there's some possibilities there. Now, brand building is wonderful, and we do that, but behind that, and we need more of character building. Building the character of the company, what it really cares about. Anyone can build a brand, but does the company care about more than just that? So, and I'm going to skip this. This is on co-creation, which we've already talked about. Now I'm ready to contrast very sharply 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Okay, marketing 1.0, as I said, is really product-centered. Job, sell products. Under marketing 2.0, the job is to satisfy and retain the customers. See, in the old days when we would sell, we wouldn't even know who would buy. Coca-Cola never had a list of the people who drink Coke. Now we want to know who bought and want them to come back. Under 3.0, we want to make the world a better place. Now there's the beginning of the idea of 3.0. And I'm going to illustrate it in a number of ways. That companies increasingly would be smart to share some of the responsibility for what's happening in the world, in the planet. I'm not saying they should take a big budget and give it away. I am saying to show that you're a company that is involved in the world, having effects on the world, and you care about the effects. So the objective is changing a little bit under 3.0. Regarding the enabling forces, remember the reason we had 1.0 is we had an industrial revolution. We learned how to do mass production. England went from an agricultural economy to an industrialized economy. Second stage was information technology. I mean, that's a big revolution in itself. If some of our people were alive who are no longer alive, they wouldn't believe cell phones. They wouldn't believe driving a car and talking to someone and all that. The third stage is, we're going to talk about it, we call it the social marketing and so on as a way to care. Then, how companies see the market. First stage, just a mass market. Second stage, smarter consumers who will respond with their mind and heart. You have to understand that most advertising in the early days was just, this is a better detergent than that one. It wasn't even emotional. It was just mind, just proving to you. You would see a commercial, two washing machines, two women. One puts the wash into one machine, the other in another. They both come out and one's cleaner. It's not really an emotional experience. It's just to prove functionally to the mind that it's better. But in this Marketing 2.0, we've become very interested in creating an emotional attachment or interest. Now, I'll tell you why. We're beginning to realize that emotions make your decision more than reason. Reason is used to rationalize why you bought, but it wasn't the driving force. Ask someone why they bought a Mercedes. If you're only doing attitude research, he will say, it's a well-engineered car. I like a well-made car. Why did he buy the Mercedes? If we go deeply, it might be, I like to show people how important I am and successful I am. It's a way of communicating that without saying it. Now, I'm not putting that down. That's fine to do. But a lot of things we buy is more, we have a feeling of wanting it, and then we justify it. Now, even with business to business, you'll be surprised. Do you know there was a time when IBM was not making the best big computers? I would have even preferred buying Honeywell computers. They were less expensive and just as good, if not better. Why did IBM have 70–80% of the market? The feeling got around that you as a buyer of computers would be really criticized if you bought Honeywell and if it didn't work well. But if you bought IBM and it didn't work well, you can't blame that guy. He went with the big, everyone's buying IBM. They say that IBM was working on the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You were buying it out of comfort. You had more comfort buying the big IBM. So even in B2B, business to business, emotions count. But what are we adding in Marketing 3.0? We're adding the idea of the whole human with mind, heart, and spirit. Can our company appeal to people not only to their mind, where it is a better product, not only to their heart, where they feel comfortable with it, but also to the spirit, where human beings say this is a very complex world, it's a troubled world. That company cares about it too. It's a caring company. So I think that's happening. The key concepts move from being product development to being differentiation to being values. So if you go down the column, the third column, you'll see a change. Goes from product specifications to corporate and product positioning. We're doing a good job of positioning, to corporate wisdom and values and so on. And finally, from a functional value proposition to a functional and emotional one, and to one that finally also has a little spiritual quality, or a little human spirit quality. Well, you can see this, but that's just a set of words. Let me put it into actually, and I'll skip the last one. Let me give you a chart that will help make this more dramatic. Interesting chart, and we do a lot with this chart in our book, where we ask you, are you in all 9 cells? Most companies are not. Now, notice this. At the top columns, question, are you appealing only to the mind of the customer, or the heart and mind, or the heart, mind, and spirit? Okay? Along the rows are 3 things. every company has to have a mission, a vision, and values. The mission is to make the best cars in the world. The vision might be to make cars that don't pollute or something. They're not maybe available now, but that might be the vision. And values is of course, a set of values that people care about. Now, if we take the first row, we might say there are companies whose mission is, we've done a good job if we've delivered satisfaction. No problem there. Maybe it would even be better if you could help the buyers realize their aspirations. You're actually, in a sense, helping them not only feel good, but feel better about what they want out of life and so on. The third is, and are you practicing any compassion? Now, I'm not saying you have to practice compassion. You're a businessman. You might practice a little with your employees when someone gets ill, the family member. You're the kind of company that says, look, take some time off. Your wife is sick in the hospital. We value you, and so on. And that's one level of compassion, and that's fine. Here's where it might come up in the real sense. You sell some of your product in a poor country, and the normal price you charge for your product is really too high for the poor country. So what you do is either you charge less for your product in the poor country, or you make it in a smaller size so it's more affordable. You're showing compassion. It's happening with the pharmaceutical market. You know, they need the same pills we need. They can't pay $2 a pill for some of these things, or the HIV problem and all that. So companies either better give away some of that to the needy, or price it down, or somehow make it more accessible. That's showing some compassion. Now, with respect to your vision today is one of profitability. It might be also returnability. People keep returning to buy from you. You're satisfying them. And then it might be, we care about sustainability and the planet. We care about the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line is profits, people, and planet. We care about profits, people, and planet. Now, the values are wonderful values. You want to be better than your competitors, in a sense. You want to be even different. You want to make a difference. All right, that's the chart. Now, the question is, do any companies do work in all 9 cells? So let's take an example. I have a couple of examples, but I'll take one. S.C. Johnson. Now, S.C. Johnson is not to be confused with Johnson & Johnson, which is another company. S.C. Johnson is in Racine, Wisconsin, and you can see their products. If you look at the upper left cell, they are in the business of making products that, insect repellent products you spray if there's an insect problem. They have aroma products, which makes the home smell better and so on. They have soaps, detergents, all kinds of waxes. They're very good at waxing a floor, waxing a car. And it's a very niche company. Every one of their products is the owner of a niche within the larger idea of waxes or something else. I will talk shortly about the Johnson & Johnson company, which is another one. But S.C. Johnson is certainly there. Now, they also appeal to the heart. They're promoting reusable shopping bags. I feel good about that. And in fact, they are working also in the poorer countries at the bottom of the pyramid. The fortunate at the bottom of the pyramid. Lower prices, easier accessibility of their products. Their vision is moving, they're winning awards for their vision, and they give you a report every year about what they did to make the world a better place. Because they've been giving away some money and supporting this cause and that cause. And then for values and sustainability, they're always rated as one of the 100 best companies to work for. And doing what's right is more important to S.C. Johnson than doing what is profitable. It comes out of a family business. You have to understand, Sam Johnson, it was a private company. Don't think it, I think it's on the stock market now, but I love family businesses because they have the opportunity to make decisions that are in the long run interest and not the quarterly dividend interest of owners who could buy the stock and sell it and have no interest in the company. So when a family is really running the business well and with real value, and they do that, and there are many times they could have been tempted into doing the profitable thing, but they're always doing the right thing. I can do this for the Timberlane Company and a couple of others. And it's a question of you taking this picture and saying, where are we? Are we all in the mind column? You know, we're doing the normal job. We're a company that's real good product, and we're doing that. So it raises those questions. That's S.C. Johnson. Now, Johnson & Johnson is a great company with probably 120 companies, basically. You know them from Band-Aids, bandages, you know them from baby shampoo. That's on the consumer side. Most of their businesses are medical products and devices and pharmaceutical products. Go and ask someone from Johnson & Johnson who they really care to serve, in what order. They will not say their first sight is on their shareholders. That is not the first group. They do not say that our first job is to maximize the income of the shareholders. Now that's if they had listened to Milton Friedman, the famous Nobel Prize economist from the University of Chicago, where I got my degree and I studied under Milton Friedman. He said a company has no other obligation than to maximize the profits of the owners. He felt other things would be a distraction. And so that philosophy still is found in many companies, that it's all about the owners and making as much as you can for them. And Milton was charitable. He said, I want the owners and the investors to do what they want to do charitably. The company should not choose any charities. But he's for charities, but he wants it to be the money that the owners make back, and they decide, not a company deciding. What if you're a member of a company and you don't like what they're giving charity to? So it wasn't totally unreasonable. But in Johnson & Johnson's case, the first group is not the shareholders. So who's the first group? What's your guess? Who do they focus on first? Who do they tell their employees to start with when they're thinking of running the business? Customers. Your intended customers. Your target market. Because if you don't do a good job for your customers, you can't do the other jobs anyways. Second group. Now they say, who's the second group that top management should be concerned with? And it's not the shareholders. Who do you think it might be? Employees, you're right. Absolutely. They said, how could we be successful if our employees are listless, unmotivated, they're not qualified? We want the best employees, because the employees are us in the marketplace. They don't know us as senior management, they know the employees. Who's the third group? Finally, the shareholders? No. Who's the third group? They say it is the communities where they operate. They want the community to be a satisfying community. They're not going to create pollution. They're not going to dump waste in water. If they're a chemical company, they are responsible for the communities in which they have operations, factories and so on. Finally, the fourth group are shareholders. And they tell this publicly. The interesting thing is by doing it that way, they're making the most money for their shareholders. much more than if they made shareholders number one. Because the result is everyone loves Johnson & Johnson, respects them, trusts them, and so on. And they make good money. Now, you have to spell out your own philosophy of the different groups and how you're going to work to, what are your priorities? To put it in a word, you're either going to be a shareholder-driven company or a stakeholder-driven company. And I think the trend is very clear. More and more companies want to be stakeholder-driven, not shareholder-driven. Now, I'll explain what that really means. It means that you have a new definition of what your company is. The old definition is your company is what you incorporated or your family has, but it stops with you. It's you and your employees in a sense. No partners. A stakeholder view of the enterprise is my enterprise happens to be, let's say you're Levi jeans. You're making the denim jeans. Your enterprise is defined as the management, the employees, the suppliers, the long-term dedicated suppliers who they get their material from, the distributors, the dealers and the retailers, and the communities. So your enterprise is not a single company. It is a set of partners. You're in partnership. And it goes with one more thought. They should all be winners. You can't be the only winner and expect good performance from suppliers, dealers, distributors, and employees. They should all be fairly rewarded for the team. And in fact, when we really think of Levi jeans, for example, and whether they're going to have a big market share, we must immediately realize that each of their competitors might think the same way, and therefore, it's not Levi's against X, it's Levi's system against X's system of partners. The job of Levi's is to have the best partners. Get them first so that the competitor has to go to second-class partners. For example, a lot of people tell me in the automobile business they like to use components from Bosch. Bosch has got the top quality. But Bosch can't work with everyone. So you got to be first in being an automobile manufacturer who gets connected with Bosch as a supplier. It's that kind of thinking. So think again about your enterprise and what are the boundaries of it in your thinking. Now, the interesting thing to me is whether a consumer or a customer can love the company, the supplier. Do we ever fall in love with a supplier? Do I love Coca-Cola? Do I love Mercedes or BMW? Now that's a big concept because love is supposed to be something that people can feel for each other, not for a company. So we might even change the question. Is there any company I would miss if it disappeared? Is there any company I'd buy something from and I would be sad if it failed? So however you word the company, this study was done and written up in a book called Firms of Endearment. And the subtitle is something like how world-class companies can profit from purpose and people or something like that. Yes, from passion and purpose. How a company can profit from passion for their work and purpose. There's a lot said about that today. There's a book that is outselling the Bible now. I mean, the yearly sales of the New Testament or whatever. It's called The Purpose-Driven. It's by Rick Warren. He's a minister. Rick Warren. The Purpose-Driven person. I'm not remembering exactly the title. It's like the world is full of people wanting a purpose for their life. You know what I mean? They're in search of meaning. And of course, he wrote up wonderful stories and so on, and people read it to sort of get reinvigorated. So, I'm not surprised at the words passion and purpose. Now, let me go back first. What they did is they did a survey in the United States and asked these questions of people. Could you name one or more companies that you would really miss or that you really love? And they put together the winners. And here they are. I'm not surprised, Amazon. I love Amazon. If there was no Amazon, I'd be really unhappy. Two reasons. One is I'm a book lover, and this makes it so easy to order a book without going to a bookstore. But the second is I can read what each person says about a book, and half the time I don't buy the book, because I've already gotten the message without buying the book. So I love Amazon. I would miss them. Best Buy is one of our electronic companies that added one more thing that every electronic company should have had. They have a nerd section, a geek section. You know, you buy a computer and you don't know how to use it. It doesn't start, let's say. Isn't it smart for an electronics retailer to have a group called the Geek Squad? And they will for hardly any money, make that computer work. And there's other things that they've done. BMW, you know, CarMax is a more systematic way to sell used cars. Because we cannot trust most people who we want to sell our car to. They won't give us much, but CarMax is more reliable. Caterpillar is a great company. I saw, when I visited, I had the wonderful pleasure of meeting the Bin Laden family, and they showed me the kind of construction work they're doing and so on. And I'm watching the film of how they built things, better roads to Mecca and Medina and so on. I'm watching the film and I'm noticing the equipment, and it's yellow, it's Caterpillar. Because I think very highly of Caterpillar. So I'm not surprised with a lot of these companies, some of which you may not know. I could always tell you what they are at another time. Wegmans is one of our best food retailers, supermarkets. Whole Food is a specialized food retailer. All the food is health. It's a very health-oriented food store. But let's not stop there. This question, is there anything in common to the best-loved companies? I mean, are all of those companies in some way living out similar philosophies? And the answer is yes. By the way, they're all highly profitable companies. It would be a surprise to me to be a loved company and not to be profitable. And they have similar characteristics. Let me give you 8 characteristics of firms of endearment. Now, you can read the book for all the stories, but I'll give you the 8. The first one is this. They're all stakeholder driven. They think stakeholders, they don't think only shareholders. 2, their executives, their top executives are paid modestly. You won't find the guys who ran Enron or others like that in these companies. These are CEOs who love their company. Actually, they would run their company for $1 a day, $1 a year. They just love their company. Everyone loves them. They're passionate about making it a great company. 3, the CEOs operate an open door policy. An open door policy. They want to be available to the employees. Now, even if they're in an office on the top floor, any employee can reach them with a message that is a suggestion for improving the business, a cost-saving idea. In fact, in one of these companies, The CEO's email address is given to every employee with this message, please, any way you think of improving our company, let me know. Any problems, let me know. Now, he may not read all of them, his assistant reads them all, but gives the 5 or 10 that are really pregnant with meaning to the CEO, and everyone is answered. Everyone is answered. Okay, so